Hey everyone, it's Maddie. Today we're going to be doing my March wrap-up and my April TBR in one video. I'm not really a TBR person. I don't really plan ahead when I'm reading most of the time because I'm a mood reader. I really just like to go with the flow and read what I'm feeling like reading at that time. For this month, I am doing a challenge in my book club and therefore do have a set TBR, so I thought I would do it. And that's why I'm combining them, because I just don't think that my TBR should have its own separate video. I'm gonna crack this guy open, Prismatic Juicy IPA. I'm gonna try that. It's a really nice can. Love that. Give this a go. I like that. It's not as fruity as I thought it would be. Pineapple, passion fruit, and guava. Yeah, not really strong flavors for me. I have it written down here in my bullet journal. Let's see. So to give you sort of an overview of my reading month, I only read 7 books, which is a low amount for me. But with everything that's going on right now, I've had some difficulties getting into books, starting books, finishing books. Reading in general has been a little bit difficult because when I start to sit and try to just be quiet and read a book, sometimes my mind races about everything that's going on. So for me, reading has been a little difficult. And it didn't also help that my reading month was pretty average. I think I just had one. Yeah, I had a couple books that I really, really liked, and then a couple that were not doing it for me. Okay, so I ended up reading 7 books this month for a total of 2,494 pages. All 7 of them I read physically, but then I also listened to 2 of them on audio. So I was kind of going back and forth between physical and audio. While I was doing other things, I was still listening to the book. I had 2 2 stars, 2 3 stars, 2 4 stars, and then only 1 5-star book. Okay, so we're just gonna go through quickly and talk about the books that I read. The first book I read this month was The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. This book, you're following this teenager, Ruthie, and her little sister, and they wake up one day and their mom has gone missing, and they don't know what happened to her. And then the other half, it goes back and forth between you're back in time with a woman named Sarah Harrison Shea, and you're seeing what happened in her life. And there's these sort of figures that are in the background of the story and you don't really know what they are. This is more of like a ghost type story. So this book I ended up giving 3 stars. It was interesting at some points. I really liked the flashback parts with Sarah, but I thought the parts with Ruthie were a little, they dragged a little bit, and I wasn't totally invested in her and her sister's story. I like how it came together in the end, but it just left me wanting more from it. I read The Invited by Jennifer McMahon and really loved that one. I felt like the stories were more balanced in that one, so I would definitely read from her again. And 3 isn't a bad reading. 3 was just it was good. So it was good. The next book I read this month was The Ritual by Adam Nevill, and I ended up giving this book 3 stars. This book was very interesting because the first half of this book was amazing. It was survival in the woods. There's a creepy something out in the woods and you don't really know what's going on, and these 4 men are trying to survive. It's about 4 men who are on this backpacking trip in sweet Scandinavian wilderness. And the first half is amazing because you're following them while they're in the wilderness, and then they're trying to take a shortcut, so then they get lost and they don't know where they're going, and it's very spooky, and they keep seeing and hearing things that are really scary. But then the second half of this book took a really weird turn that made it feel like 2 separate novels to me, and I really did not like the second half. So I give it 3 stars because the first half was amazing, the second half was what? Then for the backlist readathon, I picked up The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. This book, you're following a woman named Fiona who is really attracted to this place called Idlewild Hall because her sister's body was found there. I think it was 20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago. And so you're following her story, and then you're also following a story back in the 1950s about 4 girls who went to Idlewild Hall. And it's about things that happen there. There's ghost stuff in this as well. I ended up really liking this book. I gave this one 5 stars. I felt like I connected with all of the characters. The 4 girls who are in the past and Fiona in the present, I really liked all of them. And I just felt like the story kept me engaged the whole time. I really wanted to know what happened in the past, and then I wanted to know what was going on in the future, and also how they connected, because that's generally how these stories work. I'm just realizing that I read a couple of different books this month that had back and forth in time. Interesting. The next book I read was You Are Not Alone by Greer, Hendricks, and Sarah Pekkanen, and I sort of got lucky because my library closed. I mean, it's not lucky that my library closed, but I was able to hold on to this book and actually finish it, because I hadn't read it in the 14-day loan, 2-week timeline that I get for this. But anyway, in this book, you're following this girl named Shay Miller who sees an accident happen on the subway, and after that sort of meets these 2 sisters, the Moore sisters, and becomes enamored with them and just wants to be their friend. But there's definitely something going on that's not as it seems in this book. I gave this book 2 stars. I was really sad about it because this was one of my most anticipated books this year, and it just did not live up to my expectations. This is the 3rd book that they've written and the 3rd book I've read by them. I gave An Anonymous Girl 3 stars and The Wife Between Us 4 stars, and then I gave this one 2 stars. I just felt like this story was far-fetched, and not even in a like, oh, suspend your disbelief kind of way, because they were really trying to make it realistic, but some of the things that were able to happen and some of the maneuvers that were able to happen made me feel like I was on some spy TV show or something, not reading a thriller about normal everyday women. I mean, they have a lot of money, but some of the stuff they were able to do is just like... And then I didn't like the ending at all. And I just felt like the whole time I knew everything that was going to happen. There were no surprises in here for me. There was no intrigue. I was just reading it to finish it. I was reading it too thinking that, oh, maybe there'll be a twist that I'm not seeing, but then there never was. I literally guessed all of the twists. So much so that I did not know what the major twist was in this book. I had to read other people's reviews to figure out what the big twist was, because I guessed it. Or I just assumed that it was part of the plot. Like, it was something that in the beginning I was like, oh, this is this. And I felt like they maybe gave too many clues. I'm not sure, but this did not work for me. Then I picked up Dead to Her by Sarah Pinborough. I really liked Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. I know a lot of people didn't, but I loved it. I loved the supernatural element to it. And then I was seeing a lot of people reading this and giving it bad ratings, including people whose reviews I usually trust, and people who liked Behind Her Eyes. And then, so I was like, you know what? I got it from the library. It's already in. I'm just going to read it. I should not have read it. It was 2 stars. This book was not a thriller, in my opinion. It was marketed as so. You think it's a thriller. You think it's a thriller the whole time, and it is truly not. It's more of a story about messed up relationships. There was no thrilling aspect. I guess there was one thing at the very, towards the last quarter of the book, but up until then there was no you're trying to figure out what's happening type of situation, which is what a thriller is. And then there was a voodoo element in this that I really liked, and I wish it would have been incorporated better, because I felt like it was one of those things that was shoehorned in after the whole plot was written, so it didn't feel like it was part of it. It was one of those things that kept popping up and you were like, what does this have to do with anything? So I would still read more Sarah Pinborough because I love Behind Her Eyes so much, and the writing is really good. The story did not work for me at all. And then I picked up Mr. Nobody by Catherine Steadman. I forgot to mention, but I DNF'd this book. I DNF'd this book at 35 pages. I don't even remember why I DNF'd this book, to be honest with you, but I was 40 pages into it, and there was something that was said in this book, and I was just like, nope, I'm not reading this. And the last book I finished this month was The Dry by Jane Harper, I had started this book probably 6 months ago and just never picked it back up again. There was no reason for it. It wasn't bad. I just set it down and never picked it back up. I'm so glad I picked it back up. I give this book 4 stars. This book, you're following Aaron Falk, who is a federal agent, but he works in like money. So like he deals with like financial crimes. And he goes back to his hometown because his best friend from when he grew up has died, and his whole family has died. And people think that he killed his whole family and then killed himself. But the guy's father doesn't think that that's what, well, the guy's mother doesn't think that that's what happened. So the guy's father calls Aaron Falk and has him come back in order to investigate. And that's sort of the story. Something else also happened when they were kids, where one of his friends died, a girl died, and people suspect that Aaron had something to do with it, so he's kind of dealing with that. This was really well written, and for, like, I'm not a huge fan of detective novels. It's not really necessarily my thing, but this one was so good. I want to read the next Aaron Falk book right away. I just think Jane Harper is a great writer. I also want to read The Lost Man. I would love to read that too. Okay, so those are all the books I read in March. Pretty average reading month, I would say. I'm generally pretty generous with my ratings. Like, sometimes I feel like I give out too many 5 stars. So it was a little bizarre that I only gave out 1 this month, but I'm hoping next month is better. So now on to the TBR portion of this video. So I'm in a book club online. It's actually Jacqueline from Weedy Bookins Book Club, and we do a monthly TBR challenge. And our challenge this month was to roll a die 3 times, and then whatever number that added up to is how many books you have to read. And the max I think they put on it was 15, so like you could re-roll again if you got above that. I rolled 14, which is a lot of books. Oh, I forgot to mention the books that you don't finish. It's called Read It or Leave It, I think is what it's called. But essentially the books that you don't finish in the month, you have to unhaul. So this is a very strategically planned TBR where there are some books on here, if I don't read, I'm not going to be upset that I have to get rid of them. But also with me being home all the time, I can read 14 books if I can focus on reading for once. Okay, so this is in no particular order really of like how I want to read them. Honestly, the stack is in size order, so it's going from the smallest book to the biggest book. That's all. Okay, so the first book is Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. This is an iconic, like, cult classic type book. So this is book 1 of the Dollenganger series, and you're following these kids on the back. I actually never read this book when I was a kid, or when I was younger. I know this is one that a lot of people read. I never read this or My Sweet Audrina, so I bought them both, and I'm excited to read them. I know there's like some weird stuff, possibly like incest in this. I'm not 100% sure. Then I have the Amityville Horror by Jay Anson. This is the book that the movie was based on. Essentially, first the DeFeo family lives in this house, and one night Ronald DeFeo, one of the sons, kills his whole family, and he claimed he was like possessed or that there were demons or ghosts making him do it. And then a year later, the Lutz family moves in and they start getting haunted or something. This is technically based on a true story, but it's come out later that the Lutz family collaborated with Ronald DeFeo's lawyer and made a bunch of shit up, but it's still a good horror story. I love the movie. I prefer the Ryan Reynolds one to the Josh Brolin one. That's my personal opinion, but I'm excited to read this. Okay, the next 2 books I have are 2 Goosebumps books, Welcome to Dead House and Stay Out of the Basement. My goal for the foreseeable future, not necessarily this year, is to reread all the Goosebumps books. I want to do a series here on my channel, and I just want to relive my childhood, and I figured if I had to read 14 books, a couple of skinny guys would be nice. These I can get through both of them in the same day, probably, without any struggle. I mean, the print is huge, and they have less than 100 pages each. So Welcome to Dead House is about kids who think they live in a haunted house, and Stay Out of the Basement is about these kids whose dad is a scientist, and he has sort of a lab in their basement and doesn't let them go in. The next book There's also another challenge that I don't have to do in the book club, but I'm going to try, and it's to read big books. So I picked 2 for this TBR. Why did I pick 2 big books on a TBR of 14? I do not know, but I will tell you I have been trying to read this book for months, and I figured if I'm forced to read it or get rid of it, I'm gonna read it. And that is The Shining by Stephen King. I'm gonna read The Shining. This is a chunker. These are the beautiful, they're like Halloween editions. See, this book is 500 pages. These are like Halloween editions. I think, yeah, they're made by Hodder still. But they're these awesome Halloween editions. This is the best cover I've seen of The Shining. There's some really shitty ones out there, and this is the one that I really liked, so I went with it. But if you don't know, in this book, you're following the Torrance family, and Jack Torrance, the father, has been hired for the winter caretaker for the Overlook Hotel. So they're basically, it's in Colorado, so they're basically gonna be snowed in for the winter. And he has an alcohol problem. His son has some sort of psychic abilities, and he also has a sort of strenuous relationship with his wife, and this book just kind of highlights all those things. Then I'm going to read The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. This is another thin book. That was kind of my goal. I did about 50-50. Thin books versus regular, and then, okay, so 2 big books, so maybe not totally 50-50, but close. This book is just over 100 pages. If you don't know the story of this family moves to the neighborhood of Stepford, or the city of Stepford, and the wife starts to notice that all the wives are acting a particular way, and this is just sort of following that. I mean, I can't really give much more of a synopsis than that because this book is so short, but there is a film. I think there's actually 2 films. I think there's a Nicole Kidman one and then the older one, which I'm not sure who's in, but we will see. I read Rosemary's Baby a couple months ago and really liked it, so I think I like Ira Levin's writing. The next I'm going to read Psycho by Robert Bloch, another thin one. This is what the movie Psycho is based on. So you're following Marion Crane, and she goes to stay at the Bates Motel. You meet Norman Bates. I'm not going to give anything else away. If you don't know this story by now, I don't know what to tell you. Okay. And I also have The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, another skinny one. This is what the movie Hellraiser is based on. So at the beginning, you're following Frank, who likes dark things, and he buys this box, and it does something to him. Later, you meet his brother and his brother's wife, who his wife tries to help him come back. Next, we have my other chunker, which is The Passage by Justin Cronin. This is kind of a messed up book to be reading right now because it is about a disease sort of outbreak, but I think this one is vampires. It's a chunker. I think it's over 700 pages. I just bought this book, so I'm really hoping to get through it because if I don't, it would be a waste of $18. So, hoping to get to this one. Okay. And then we have Bring Me Back by B.A. Paris. I know I got this on the bargain bookshelf at Barnes & Noble, so I think I only paid like $7 for it. So if I have to get rid of this one, I have to get rid of this one. It's okay. This is a thriller. Let's see. I'm not sure what this is about. Let's see. She vanished. A decade ago, his girlfriend disappeared. He lied. He told the police the truth about that night, just not the whole truth. Their secrets won't stay buried. Now he's moved on, but the past isn't done with him yet. So is she still alive? Bring Me Back? I don't know. I read Behind Closed Doors and really liked that one, so I thought I'd give B.A. Paris another shot. The next book on my TBR is The Highway by C.J. Box. This is a book my mom recommended to me. She read it and really liked it. It's about 2 girls who vanish off of a highway. That's all I really know. That's all I need to know. Hopefully I get to this one, but again, this is one that I could get rid of and not be upset about because my library does have this book on ebook, in fact, so I could even get it now. But again, I'm really hoping to get to all these books and not have to unhaul because I really only like to unhaul books if I didn't like them or I don't think I'm going to read them. Like they were books I bought a while ago and I'm like, why did I buy this? So then I have The Hunger by Alma Katsu, which was also on my backlist readathon TBR, and I also didn't get to it. This book, you're following the Donner Party, and there's some supernatural element to this. It's a horror book. I've heard really good things about Alma Katsu, and her new book, The Deep, just came out, which is about the Titanic. I'm really excited about both of them. Then I have The Cheerleaders by Kara Thomas. This was also on my backlist readathon TBR, so I kind of moved, I think, 3 or 4 books over from that TBR to this challenge because I really did want to get to them. I've had this one for a little while. This one, a bunch of cheerleaders have died and then the cheerleading team has been disbanded, and it happened like 5 years ago or something, and they're doing some sort of remembrance ceremony, but our main character wants to forget what happened for some reason. Who knows? Okay, then the last book I picked because it has a lot of pictures in it. I don't know if this is is this a graphic novel? No, probably not. I don't know. It's A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. It has a lot of pictures in it. It's quite short anyway. Yeah, it's only 200 pages, and I think like half the pages are pictures. I don't really know what this one's about. I think it's about a monster and a boy, and I've heard people say it's really sad, so maybe I need a good cry. Okay, so those are the books that I read in March and that I want to read in April. In the future, my TBR will never be this long. It just happens to be for this readathon challenge. Usually my TBR will probably only be a couple books, and then at the end of the month, you'll see what I sort of filled in with based on my mood reading. But yeah, that's going to do it for me today. I hope that everyone's doing well. I hope you're staying happy and safe out there and staying inside your house. But if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more content from me. And give me a comment down below. What are you planning on reading in April? What did you read in March? How did you feel about it? But yeah. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.